Before Capone. Before the Tommy guns echoed in alleys and blood pooled on the snowy sidewalks of Chicago. There was Johnny Torrio. They called him the Fox. Not for how fast he ran, but for how smart he played the game. In the world of organized crime, Torrio wasn't the loudest, the bloodiest, or the most feared. But make no mistake, he was the architect. The quiet genius who turned 1,000 backroom rackets into a criminal empire. Born Giovanni Torrio in Ercina, Italy, in 1882, he came to America as a child and grew up in the rough immigrant neighborhoods of New York City. He wasn't a bruiser. He wasn't a thug. He was the kid who read books, studied people, and played chess while the others brawled in the gutters. By the time he was in his 20s, Torrio had carved out his own niche, running gambling dens and loan shark operations under the watchful eye of Paul Kelly's 5 Points gang. That's where he met a young punk named Al Capone, a hot-headed Brooklyn kid with a mean streak and a scar on his cheek. Torrio saw potential in Capone. Not just muscle, but loyalty. And when the time came to expand his operations, Torrio left New York and headed west, to Chicago. Chicago in the 1910s was a city straining at the seams. Industry was booming, immigrants were flooding in, and politics as dirty as the Chicago River. It was a city of vice, drinking, gambling, girls, and Torrio saw it for what it was. An opportunity. He partnered with his uncle-in-law, Big Jim Colosimo, a flashy, old-school brothel boss who controlled most of the city's sex trade. But when Prohibition passed in 1920, Torrio realized that bootlegging was the future. Booze meant power. Booze meant money. Colosimo didn't agree. He liked his brothels. Thought bootlegging was messy. Dangerous. So, Torrio made a decision. He had Colosimo killed. The hit was clean. A couple bullets in the lobby of Colosimo's cafe. No one ever proved it, but everyone knew. Torrio was in charge now. And Chicago would never be the same. Under Torrio, Chicago's underworld became a machine. He brought structure to chaos. Instead of gangs fighting over corners, he pushed for cooperation. He believed in alliances and syndicates. In making money, not headlines. He organized bootlegging routes across state lines. Protected speakeasies through bribed cops and politicians. He taxed gambling dens and brothels like a CEO. It wasn't about the thrill of crime. It was about the business of it. And right by his side, rising through the ranks, was Al Capone. But with power comes enemies. One of Torrio's biggest threats was the North Side Gang, led by Dean O'Banion, an Irishman with a smile and a switchblade temper. For a while, Torrio tried diplomacy. He didn't want war. War was bad for profits. But O'Banion made a mistake. He sold Torrio a brewery that he knew the police were about to raid. Torrio got arrested, and he didn't like being made to look like a fool. Weeks later, O'Banion was gunned down in his flower shop. 3 men walked in, looked him in the eye, and blew him away. The peace shattered. The North Side retaliated. And in January 1925, Johnny Torrio stepped out of his apartment with his wife, thinking the storm had passed. But it hadn't. Waiting in a parked car were hitmen. They opened fire. Bullets tore through Torrio's body. One shattered his jaw. He slumped to the sidewalk, bleeding out. He survived, but barely. Lying in the hospital, jaw wired shut, Torrio had time to think. And what he thought was this. I'm done. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want blood. He wanted out. And so, just like that, Johnny Torrio retired. He called in Capone, who was just 26 at the time, and handed him the empire. Bootlegging, brothels, gambling, unions, it was all his. Capone would go on to become the most infamous gangster in American history. But the blueprint he followed? That was Torrio's. Torrio left Chicago and moved to Italy for a while. Later, he returned to New York and lived like a gentleman. Wore fine suits. Attended high society events. He was even rumored to have advised on the creation of the National Crime Syndicate, a network that connected East Coast mafias with Midwestern outfits. He stayed out of the spotlight. No more shootouts. No more deals in smoke-filled basements. Torrio had done what very few mobsters ever do. He got out alive. He died in 1957. Heart attack. No bullets. No betrayal. No prison. Just a quiet end for a man who built an empire. Johnny Torrio wasn't a saint. He was a criminal. But he was a strategist, a visionary, and above all, a survivor. While Capone burned bright and fast, Torrio was the slow flame, the steady hand behind the scenes. When you think of Chicago's dark legacy, remember this. Without Johnny Torrio, there might never have been an Al Capone. And without him, Chicago might have been just another city.